So, all right, everybody. Well, I can still see every second that goes by another attendee joining, so that's really exciting. My name is Barrett Urshik. I'm the founder and CEO of Holganix. And at Holganix, I think most of you know who we are. We're a company. We manufacture and distribute a microbial-based soil additive that helps improve functionality of soil by harnessing the power of soil microbes. Over 800 species of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and amoeba all working together to help drive healthier soil and improve yields in row crop as well as produce. We really want to just thank everybody for joining us on this call today, and especially want to thank Kevin Van Trump for agreeing to be part of this call, and frankly for being part of the vision of this call. This call really came out of Kevin and I just talking about, we were going to be talking about grower meetings and how to help educate people on Bio 800, but obviously this Corona virus came up, and it was just changing how everybody did everything and how everybody thought about everything and felt about everything. And so we decided to just kind of put our normal kind of grower meeting agenda aside, and just Kevin and I talking said, hey, what can we do to maybe try to be of service to people during this time of crisis and change and uncertainty, and how could we specifically be there for the rural community and our grower community to help just be a voice, and just be a place where we can all talk and kind of think about what's happening, but also thinking about what can we do moving forward. There's a lot we can't do. I mean, there's a lot of macro trends that are affecting us with this coronavirus and our behaviors that we have to be mindful of in order to help prevent the spread of this thing, and how that's impacting how we live, how we spend our money, how we work. That being said, there's a lot of things that we can control, and there's things that we can do to help ensure that we're going to have a great year as producers, as entrepreneurs, and investors. And so with that, we wanted to give a forum for Kevin to speak to the community and kind of give you his feedback on what he's seeing on the trends and how Corona is impacting the grower community, how it's impacting potentially commodity pricing. Where are there opportunities? Where is there challenges? Where is there danger? As you think about this whole thing we're in, the word crisis certainly does come to mind. And John F. Kennedy made the term crisis famous when he talked about how that the Chinese character has two lines to serve, two brushstrokes to serve the word crisis. One stands for danger, beware of danger. The other stands for opportunity. So we need to be aware of both things in this time, not just the panic and the concern, but also in what are the things we can control, what are the opportunities we can create in this time of challenge for our country and frankly for the world. And so it's a tough time for everybody. I know there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of stress. We've got Dave Stark on the call as well. Dave's the president of agriculture for Holganix. Dave's a PhD molecular biologist. Spent 25 years at Monsanto before joining Holganix, and he runs our agricultural division for Holganix. And so Dave's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to soil science, when it comes to using microbes to build soil health and plant health. And so as the conversations go that way, we've got Dave here as a resource. But Kevin, I'd like to just kind of start off with you and just give us, as we got everybody on the call here, tell us what you're seeing, what you're feeling. I know things are changing hour by hour. What's going on in the world, and how does it affect us in agriculture and rural communities?
Yeah, Barrett, can you guys hear me good?
We can hear you well, yeah.
Yeah, hey, I was thinking, why don't I rarely get a chance to tell folks. I get hit every day with millions of different offers. I shouldn't say millions, hundreds of different offers a year for people wanting me to back them or to promote their ag service or promote whatever it may be. I rarely do any. In fact, I mean, rarely, because I don't. I've been approached by, like I said, hundreds. I sit on the board of a few, but rarely I do any. And I thought the last time we went out, Barrett, and spoke a couple of times, to let everyone know, for full disclosure, I have a vested interest in Holganix. I believe in the product. I own some shares in the company. I'm invested through it with iSelect and some other people. So I thought it was interesting, though, when I first met Barrett, his story on how this all came about. We'll get to a little bit more of the doom and gloom on what's happening here with Corona. But Barrett, I mean, while we got everyone on, I thought just to tell people why they're seeing the ads in the report and why I'm part of your group, just kind of tell them your story on how it came about and how I took it. I kind of looked at it like our own struggles that we have on our own farms in agriculture. And I know you weren't in the ag space in the beginning, and that's what I kind of liked, because I didn't feel like you were coming after us as the farmer, or you were trying to get in the farm gate originally. And, it just kind of evolved into that. Can you just give them a little background why we have them on the call, Barrett?
Yeah, that's great, Kevin. Thanks for bringing that up. And in fact, I think it's appropriate for the time that we're in right now, time of great challenge, and where nobody really knows where things are going to go. Katie, can you pull up the slide with the fire?
Yeah, it's further
So
back.
Kate's going to just kind of shuffle through some slides here.
Oh, it's not showing
It
up.
didn't show up?
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that's fine. So, so my background is I started off in the fertilizer space, but doing residential and commercial lawn care. So if you guys know ChemLawn or True Green, I was a competitor to the ChemLawn and True Greens of the world. I built and sold two companies. I sold one to Scott's and one to ChemLawn. My last company, we had that up to about 100 trucks that went out every day and sprayed lawns, killed weeds and put down fertilizer. We were a traditional chemical fertilizer application company. Our motto was we just tried to just do a little bit better job than the big competitors, but we basically did the same thing. But through that evolution of that business, we were really big around the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and we started to see a lot of pressure hit us around the Chesapeake Bay watershed around nitrate and phosphate runoff and pesticide use, and when we could apply nitrogen, how much nitrogen we could apply, how much had to be slow release. We were getting fines if they found any of our granular fertilizer on the street or the walkways, because it wasn't allowed to be on impervious coverage. It just started, the regulations and the fertilizer cops around the Chesapeake Bay watershed started to become burdensome for the industry. It also started to become a lot of publicity against lawn care as an industry, and I saw that as a challenge and frankly a problem. So we started to look for alternatives. How could we create green, weed-free lawns as we had always done, using less nitrogen, less phosphorus, less pesticides? And we looked at every organic alternative under the sun and tried lots of them. We had started to try this one at the time, what I thought was a goofy microbial, snake oil. It didn't, sounded too good to be true, but I was trying anything. And so we had tried on a couple of trucks, and we had over 100 trucks. We had 3 trucks that went out and was testing this goofy microbial stuff that I had heard about and met the inventor of. And we were looking at it, but frankly, I wasn't looking at it closely. And then one day, fertilizer, as you all know, goes up and down, and we saw fertilizer pricing moving up. So we bought a whole bunch of fertilizer to hedge our bets, and we stuffed as much fertilizer as we could into our warehouse. We typically held about $50,000-$60,000 worth of fertilizer at any time, and then we would just get deliveries every couple of days. Well, we had put in $500,000 to $600,000 worth of fertilizer on this occasion, and the picture that we were hoping to pull up, which didn't load up, but it's a picture my dad took. I want to kind of describe it to you all. So I want you to picture helicopters above my warehouse, and I want you to picture black smoke coming up above the warehouse, and the helicopters are all the local news programs going on top of my warehouse with black smoke coming up. And what had happened was, here's a picture I'm talking about. So what had happened was our building had caught on fire. We had a contractor who was building some office space inside of the warehouse, and he decided to try to try some drywall with a propane fired heat gun, and he set the building on fire. We had about 20 people in the building. They all got out of the building. Nobody got hurt, thank God. But just before this picture was taken, my dad lived up the street. He saw the helicopters. He saw the black smoke. He figured out what had happened. By the way, all my trucks were all lined up in the parking lot, which you can't see here. The parking lot was diked because all the water that had run off of this was hazardous waste. The EPA was there. We had to pay $150,000 to clean up all the water. We got a lot of publicity that day for our company because all of our trucks were lined up with their logos on them. Wasn't exactly great publicity. And my dad came up crying, and right when he took this picture, he saw what had happened, and he put his arm around me, and he was crying. He said, I'm so sorry this had to happen to you today, son. And I said, "Oh, Dad, it's okay." He said, "Oh, it's okay." He says, and by the way, I have to give you one more detail. We did not have insurance to cover any of this. So I did not have content insurance, and I did not have the EPA cleanup insurance. We had insurance on the building, but nothing inside the building and nothing on the. So it was a true, $650,000, $750,000 loss to us, which really we were a nice business, but that was enough to put us out of business. So my dad's crying. "I'm so sorry this had to happen to you." He puts his arm around me. I said, "Oh, it's okay, Dad. Today's a good day." He says, "Today's a good day." And he looks at me all confused. And I said, "Yeah, today's a good day." He says, "Why?" I said, "I don't know why. I don't know why and I don't know how, but somehow today is a gift." And he says, "Well, all right, I'm going to take a picture of you. Go ahead, stand right there next to the building. I'm going to take a picture of you so that when you realize what gift this is, we can remember this moment." And that's this picture that my dad took. And the reason that I could have that perspective of that this was a gift is because I was fortunate enough to have met a monk named Brother David Steindelrast just a few months before this. This is a picture of me and Brother David. He's a Catholic Benedictine monk. And I'm going to tell you a story about Brother David that he's a very religious man, a very spiritual man. I'm not trying to promote or debate anybody's religious beliefs. I'm just telling you my experience with a spiritual man. And I think this will really relate to what we're all going through with Corona. And we're going to tee it off. We're going to bring this back to Kevin and the markets. But so Brother David, he came and spoke to a big business group I was in at MIT, and he wanted to talk about this idea of gratitude as a necessary, as a tool for businesses to create resiliency in their companies and as a core value in companies and how that could help companies move forward. And so that's why he was at this program at MIT. And I listened to his program, and he talked about Brother David was a teenager in Austria when the Nazis invaded, and he talked about how hard that was to be a teenager when the Nazis invaded his town. He said there was no heat, there was no lights, there was no windows because they were all blown out from the fighting. It was cold, it was dark, it was damp. The Nazis were there. He was forced to serve in the Nazi army. His grandfather was Jewish. His grandfather had to hide. And he just talked about how he saw death and despair everywhere. But during that time in his life, for some reason, Brother David decided to look for something to be grateful for every single day when the Nazis invaded his town and World War II. I mean, just think about the times we're going through right now seem tough. That must have been tougher. But he looked for something to be grateful for every day. Sometimes it was a hug from a friend, a song from a bird, dew dripping from a newly blossoming flower. But Brother David said that that got him through that time. It helped him survive, and it inspired him to be a monk. He then dedicated his monk studies to this idea of gratitude as a necessary part to spiritual evolution. And he did a 20-year theological project on this idea of gratitude. And he went and lived with the leaders of the Muslim faith and the Buddhist faith and the Hindu faith, the Jewish faith, and obviously plenty in Christianity and Catholicism because that's where he came from. And he found this idea of gratitude flowing through all these great religions. And he wrote a thesis on a theological paper on gratitude being a necessary part of spiritual evolution. And it was very interesting and didn't change my life. But what did change my life is talking to Brother David after his presentation. I went to Brother David and I said, Brother David, and again, this is not about debating or promoting anybody's religious beliefs. It's not what I'm about here. But I said to Brother David, my mom, she went to Catholic church and I went to church with her. And boy, they got a really specific process to get to heaven. And remember, he's a Catholic Benedictine monk. I said, my wife, she went to Baptist church and boy, they have a really specific process to get to heaven. And I said, Brother David, I said, let alone you lived with the Hindu leaders and the Buddhist leaders and the Muslim leaders and the Jewish leaders. I said, I can't figure out whether my wife's going to go to heaven or my mom's going to go to heaven. But if I listen to the two processes, I can't figure out that they're both going to go to heaven. I said, so which process do I want to follow? Because I'd like to go to heaven. I mean, not right now, but at some point I'd like to go to heaven. And Brother David, and I thought it was frankly a smart ass question just to hear his sales pitch on Catholicism, because I figured that's what he was, as a salesman for Catholicism as a Benedictine monk. But that's not what Brother David did. Brother David stood back and he put his hands into a diamond and he said, heaven is available to the Muslim and the Jew. He goes on to say, heaven is even available to the Catholic. And he laughs because he's Catholic. He goes on to say, heaven is even available to the atheist. But often the atheist doesn't find heaven because the atheist is full of conflict. The atheist is full of pushing away. And he goes on to say, religions are belief systems that are necessary for people to find faith. But faith is trust in life. Trust that everything life brings you is a gift, even if it seems like it's a pile of shit. He laughs again. Didn't know monks curse, but apparently they do. He goes on to say, if you can trust that everything life brings you as a gift, then you will trust that even days that appear to be full of darkness are gifts. And if you can trust that those days are gifts, then you remove stress, conflict, and anxiety from your heart, and you replace it with peace, creativity, and opportunity. He goes on to say, if you can trust that even those days that appear to be full of darkness are gifts, then you can have heaven on earth, because what is heaven if not peace, creativity, and opportunity in our heart? And he goes on to say, if you could trust that everything life brings you as a gift, then surely you will trust that even death is a gift, because what does life bring everybody if not death? And he goes on to say, if you can trust that even death is a gift, then surely you will go to heaven. And I don't know what happened. I wasn't looking for this answer. I wasn't looking for this connection from him. I started crying like a crocodile, tears coming out of my eyes in the middle of this business meeting. And he reaches over and hugs me and he says, I see you understand. And at that moment, he did change me. He did release a lot of anxiety and stress and conflict that was in my heart about things that weren't going right in my life, things that I couldn't control. I just let go of them at that moment and chose to live instead of from a point of fear and scarcity. I chose to live from a point of faith and abundance. And incidentally, whether you are Christian or not Christian, this is the same concept. But Brother David, when he said life, later he told me he meant God, and those two words are synonymous to him. You can take that to mean anything you'd like. But what Brother David taught me was that I can't control what happens to me. I can only control how I respond to what happens to me. But if I can respond with gratitude, even when things don't appear to be good, if I can just choose that those things are good and something good will come from that, then I'll find creativity and opportunity on the other side. If I choose to look at things that I can't control as, and curse them and moan and complain, then I'm going to find challenges and obstacles, conflict and anxiety on the other side. And so when my building burned down just a couple months after meeting Brother David, I thought, this is my chance. This is my chance to test his theory. Hey, this is a gift, and I'm just going to look for the answer. Now, what happened on the other side of this fire, the next day, I got my people into a room and I said, hey, we got to go fertilize lawns in the next couple of days because we got to keep this business alive. We don't have any fertilizer, and the supply houses won't sell us any fertilizer because we still owed a lot of money on the fertilizer to just burn up, and people were afraid we were going to go out of business. The only fertilizer we could get was this goofy microbial stuff that I had been testing. That guy was very eager for us to convert our fleet over, so he was willing to give us fertilizer on terms. So I said to my people, I said, look, I don't know if this stuff works. We've tested it a little bit, but there were some hurdles to overcome at the time. It's not the product that we sell today, but it was the basis to the product we sell today. It was hard to use. It was high volume, needed to be used. We fixed those things in the product that we use today. This is like 15 years ago I'm talking about. I said, we can go spray water or we can spray this goofy microbial stuff, but we got to go generate invoices and we don't have anything else to put on the lawns. So we all decided we're going to put this goofy microbial stuff down. At least we could tell the customers we were doing something for them. And we went through the effort of converting our fleet over to having spray rigs that would work for this goofy microbial stuff and working through the volume issues. And we figured it would just be a temporary measure until we could get back to using real fertilizer. And what we were blown away with is that summer, we saw less disease, better roots. We had a drought that came in that year. Our lawns held on better than anybody else's. Color was better, lasted longer. They came out healthier. And we really were able to dramatically reduce our amount of fertilizers we could use because these microbes acted like little fertilizer factories. Now that doesn't translate exactly into agriculture, but it does work in certain lawn care situations the way I'm talking about. And so we became, pretty quickly, we became the largest customer of this scientist who had this technology. We started to see the results, and I started to see the benefit of being, really the lawn care company that was going to answer this challenge around nitrate, phosphate, and pesticide runoff into the Chesapeake Bay. It allowed us to give us a marketing differentiation to our customers, to our competitors. We were able to pick up a lot of new business for that lawn care business, and I had a vision that I could use this technology, fix some of the challenges with it, make it easier to use, make it more stable, make it more concentrated, make it more consistent. And we could take this across the lawn care industry and have a big impact on how we create green, weed-free lawns. And so I sold my company to ChemLawn, my spray company, so I could take that money and invest in this company, the goofy microbial stuff. I bought the IP from the inventor. He came on as an R&D guy for us. I brought in a couple of PhD types, and we made the product better and better and better. We took it across to over 1,000 lawn care companies across the country, 700 golf courses, a bunch of professional ball fields, from the Royals to the Red Sox. And and we did help impact how people create green weed-free lawns, and made this idea of using soil microbes and soil health in lawn care kind of an acceptable conversation at a time when that really wasn't even a beginning of a conversation. And we used organic soil microbes as an agronomic tool to create healthier lawns, healthier soils. We still use chemical fertilizers and pesticides, but we use less of them. And so through that journey, I was able to some of our customers. We were just outside of Lancaster, so we had some Amish landscape type customers who were also farmers, and so they started using it on everything they grew. And one day we got a call from one of our Amish customers who had won a watermelon competition that his cousin had won 10 years in a row, and nobody could beat his cousin. And he beat his cousin that year, and he said his secret was using our Holganix microbial consortium. And we were written up in this little local Amish Gazette around being the secret sauce for his watermelon win. And next thing I know, I'm doing literally standing on soapboxes in with gas lights in Amish barns, talking to farmers about how to use our product to help build soil health. Not fully understanding how it was going to improve crops, but knowing it would help improve soil, and healthier soil will produce healthier plants, and we'll see what happens. So the Amish taught us a lot about how we could help improve agriculture, and I just saw the opportunity. There's two things. I used to think about scaling my revenues in my companies, but when we started this company, I started thinking about how to scale impact, and I figure if I can scale impact, revenue will come. And so we saw that while lawn care and golf course and sports turf was an exciting place to use this idea of using microbes for soil health and plant health, that the real place where we could provide the most leverage and the biggest impact was going to be agriculture and helping with food production. And so we started about 6 years ago. We started to build data and formulations to really focus on agriculture. And last year we commercialized our formulations. Meantime, we were doing lawn care and golf and sports turf all along, but we focused on building data, and we brought Dave Stark on to help us build that agricultural business plan and build that agricultural data and formulations. And then last year we commercialized that with row crop and some produce and some hemp, and we were really pleased with with the amount of acres that we were able to get on, and with the results that we were able to get from our customers. And this is our second year of commercialization now, where we're really expanding our agricultural footprint and the impact we can make in agriculture, helping farmers build long-term soil health and creating a legacy of creating soil that's got a higher more functional than the soil they inherited, so they can pass it down in better shape than they got it. But also in creating yield in the first year they use the product that more than pays for the product, puts money back in the farmer's pocket in the form of yield that far exceeds what the product would cost per acre. And I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm passionate about entrepreneurship. So when we thought about going to market with in agriculture, our vision became finding the entrepreneurial farmer dealer, and getting those entrepreneurial farmer dealers to represent our products locally, become the local microbial expert in our product, and help show what the product can do on their farms, and help get the product to their neighbors, and help them have a dealer and a revenue source for their farm, not just as providing additional yield and soil health, but also in helping to distribute our product and show it to their neighbors. So that's been the business model. Last year we brought on 17 new dealers. This year we're going to be up over 30. We are looking for a few more dealers. If there's people on the phone that are interested, want to be a farmer dealer, if they see themselves as that entrepreneurial farmer, we're interested in talking to a few people. And at the same time, we're also looking for customers to use the product. But that's a big, long kind of evolution as to how I started off spraying lawns and had a fire that was influenced by a monk to say, look for the opportunity on the other side of it. Don't look for the curse and don't look for the problems. Look for the opportunities and look for the solutions. And so that fire really opened up the opportunity for me to jump in with all feet into the microbial world. I would not have jumped in as quickly, and may not have jumped in at all, had I not had that fire. That fire pushed me, and it was the gift that brought me to really the thing that I think I was born to do, which is to be this evangelist of soil health and using harnessing the power of microbes to build soil health and plant health, and the impact that we can provide. That was really a catalyst of this fire is really the gift and the gratitude in it all. But here's the real key lesson. We can't control what happens to us. We can only control how we respond to what happens to us. And if we look at what's happening with Corona and all the things around us that seem like it's way out of our control, what we do have control of is our response to what's happening. And if we can just take a deep breath and really focus on the things we can invest in, our families, our soils, our farms, and do the best we can there, and have an attitude of faith and abundance, then we'll get through this and we'll find opportunities on the other side of this, just like the fire was for me. So, Kevin, is that the kind of thing you're asking me? You're looking for me to get into?
Damn it, that was long-winded, Barrett. I mean, yes, sure. No, I'm kidding you. And I just think everybody should understand. I love the story just because, you know, you were similar to us in the fact that you were a guy struggling with pressure from the local government and the local people kind of leaning on you. You had to find an alternative, and you know, you didn't want to, but you were kind of forced into going with that solution. And you didn't set out to try and make money off the farmer. You didn't set out trying to squeeze anyone on any end, like a lot of companies that come to us and they're trying to figure out, you know, first and foremost how to make money, and then they build a product from there. Like I said, that's what I liked about your situation. You were in a similar predicament as many of us, and you know, by fate and luck, you kind of came across this, and here we are today. So hopefully things work out the way we planned. It's going to be good for everyone involved, win-win for everybody, which to me is the best of all situations. So appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for the tee up there, Kevin. I
Do you
appreciate
have
it.
anything else, Barrett, on that? Do you want me to kind of?
No, I think a lot of people want to hear your kind of overview
No, yeah, no.
on what's happening, and then, you know, maybe we can tie it back to the things that, you know, there's a lot of things out of our control, which I think you're going to talk about. Oil prices and commodity prices and how the corona is impacting the market are all things that we can't necessarily control. There are things we can do to hedge against those things, but I think everybody wants to hear about that, and then maybe we bring it back to the things they can control.
I think also, Katie, is it enabled people can type in questions on that question column right over there on the right?
Yes.
I think we can. I'm
start.
pretty sure a couple of these this week. So
That's a good question. So I can see.
I think U of I did one for U of I, and I did a couple others for some bigger hedge fund traders this week. So yeah, I think you can type questions. If anybody has questions, they can type them in over there. I can maybe answer them. Just kind of start off. I mean, this thing's pretty much following. If we want to talk the stock market, we want to talk corn, beans, and wheat prices. Let's just start off with an overview of the macro landscape. So when I get up every morning and have to assess my own risk on our ag investments and our farm type things, I always start with the macro. That's why I list that first and foremost up top. You know, I'm a little bit concerned. It's pretty much the market's following the same pattern that we had seen in 08, 09. It's almost lockstep. It's happening at a lot faster pace. Where 08, 09 it drew out over about 7-8 months, but you know, it's happening very similarly. We've seen the massive kind of break. Now we, you know, as I wrote last week, I suspected this week we would chop around and maybe see 3 or 4 days of upside movement. We're getting that. That's where you're getting, you know, people are getting drawn in because the market's starting to bounce back higher. As I kind of wrote yesterday, the bulls, and it's kind of good because Jordan, my son, has come on board, you know, about 2 years ago as he got out of college, and he always asked me, you know, Dad, what would you do if you could ever do it different? And I said, I'd have been a professional investor way earlier. And it just, you know, he says, how do you do that? And I said, well, you got to start by making investments and looking at companies and looking at balance sheets and understanding the macros. And so he's keeping me in tune with what most individual investors struggle with and things they struggle with. So around the Super Bowl, to back up a second, around the Super Bowl, when we first started really digesting the headlines, our family was down in Miami for the Chiefs victory there at the Super Bowl. But, you know, we were really pulling off a lot of positions and really backing down a lot of our exposure across the whole board. And I was telling Jordan and Kennedy and the kids, I said, we got to just back it off. I said, this thing in China with Corona is real. China's the world's number 2 biggest economy. And about 70-75% of our economy is based off consumer consumption and consumer spending. If it were to get here and become an issue, we're going to have some problems, and we probably just need to back throttle here. We're near all-time highs, and hey, let's take some things off. So we did. The next 2-3 weeks, the market proceeds to just go straight higher. Jordan looks at me, and we sat around a couple of times around dinner table, and he's like, "Dad, I think you're losing touch with the market. I think you're, maybe that old school stuff you learned down in Chicago at the Board of Trade, the Merc, that ain't happening." And I just said, well, I was starting to second guess myself. I'd said, I said, patience, young grasshopper. This, let's see how this plays out. And we just kept moving higher. And I said, wow, that's just nuts to think that we're just going to keep rallying into this thing. Well, then it started to get a little more intense into Italy. My daughter was in Italy. She was studying architecture over there. She got the United States Embassy got her out of there, and things started to get a little bit more real. And a lot of our connections and friends and higher money investors tend to spend a lot of time in Italy with their family and their friends, and it started to hit home a little bit more. So we started to hear a few more hedge funds, a few more bigger traders starting to exit and move to the sideline. And then we started to get the break. Then we started to see more cases here in the U.S. and it's become a whole lot real in a whole lot bigger hurry for a lot of folks. And we were telling, like I said, we were advising my family and my friends, hey, we were canceling. Michelle and I were supposed to be in Europe for 3 months, starting at the end of March. We were going to be all over Europe. We had 2 big events planned. We had to cancel everything. We canceled them way, way ahead of this. So we started canceling, like I said, at the end of Jan and early Feb, and, people were kind of giving us crap and saying, you guys are making this, blowing this way out of proportion. Well, maybe we were, maybe we weren't. Obviously now, it's a lot more severe, a lot more significant than anyone had thought, and here we are. So I think it's taken a similar path to what we'd seen in the markets to what we'd seen in 08, 09. We peaked in October 07. We proceed to tumble aggressively into early March of 09. I should say we taken, like I said the other day, we came out of the gates, we peak in 07, the stock market, we break into about July, August, September, we level out in that period. Unemployment starts to skyrocket. We break again into early March of 09 and hit the 666 level in the S&P. And then we rally from there out of the hole for 10, 12 years. I think you got to ask yourself, when will peak unemployment be? As I mentioned the other day, and the market will sniff that out about 3 to 4 weeks early. Goldman's latest numbers are unemployment claims this week will jump by 2 to 3 million. We suspect you're going to wipe out our numbers. You're going to wipe out 70-75% of the entire restaurant business, and they won't come back for a while. We're making our bets. Our bets are on the bigger players in the restaurant space. They're going to gain a lot of market share. Chipotle, McDonald's, Starbucks. Those people are going to pick up market share as you lose a lot of the littler players. And so you have to start thinking kind of, how's this going to play out longer term. I'm hesitant. Like I said, I've been hedged. So we were short some minis going into the thing in some regular S&P 500 contracts against our 401ks or against our other bigger portfolios. We liquidated, had them scaled way down, and we're short, like I said, the S&P. So we've escaped pretty much unscathed on the move. And I'm hesitant to jump back in wholeheartedly and add to any positions. We have tried to upgrade, some of the lower tier stocks we may have been invested in. A lot of guys call it the JV team. You try to upgrade to the varsity players and buy some of the all-stars at the deeper discounted breaks. We've made that move, but in a real small capacity. I may have at risk. If I'm going to put a position on right now, I'm going to start and think of it in about 10 different units, 10 segments, and I'll put on one unit now. And looking to feather in or nibble into it as the market continues to break. I think we're probably in a little bit of a rolling bear market, maybe for the next 6, 12, 18 months. With that being said, I've never seen a bear market. There's about 3 phases, and you heard some guys today, may have heard some fund traders talking about it. There's really, I was taught there are about 3 phases to a bear market. The first phase, everyone's saying, hey, this is only temporary and it won't last. I mean, every guy and every trader and every lady that I've ever traded around, at the beginning of a bear market, they say this pullback, this setback's only temporary and it won't last. every big problem starts as a small problem, correct? Phase two of a bear market is generally, everyone starts saying, this thing's going to last longer than I thought. This thing might be more severe than I thought. That's usually phase two. Phase three of a bear market is this will never end. Just get me out. This is never going to end. We're done. This just will not end. And those are where the big bargains are had. We're not near at that point. I mean, we're debating every day. My wife's getting calls from people, real estate agents. There's my friends, Jordan and Kennedy. Our kids have friends. Hey, we're wanting to buy some stocks. Hey, we're thinking about buying some stocks. We're nowhere near just get me out. We still have a lot of people that are wanting to buy stocks on the way down, on the break. I mean, everybody I talk to is like, hey, I got some money sitting around. I'd like to buy some stocks here. Okay, well, that tells you that we're not, this isn't a cleansing, so to speak, as of yet. We have a ways to go. And your big question is this just a pullback in a bull market, or is this the start of a rolling bear market? Now, my contention is it's probably the start of a rolling bear market. I don't think I just don't think we've reached. You had two things come out this week: the Fed changed monetary policy, and the government came on with fiscal policy. Those are two legs. And as I wrote this morning, that's awesome. That's great that they acted early and acted fast. But it doesn't matter how easy they make the bike to pedal, the US consumer still has his hand on the brake. President Trump can say, we're coming back online at Easter. That's awesome. I've polled a lot of people and a lot of families, and I said, what are you going to do? Well, they're not going to do anything. They're going to hunker down and let this thing try to pass. They're going to try and, they don't want to lose a loved one. They don't want to lose a family member. This has them spooked. And as that has them spooked, like I said, I don't think anyone's going to come back online and just massively jump back in on the side of consumer spending. Sure, you may come back out of this and say, hey, I want to take my family on a vacation. You're probably not going on a cruise ship right out of the gates. You're probably not going over to Europe right out of the gates. You might go down to Silver Dollar City for a little while. Or you might go play some putt-putt and go to the movie theater here or there. But you're not going to race right back in. I just don't see that as the case. Human psychology is similar to you see an animal. I mean, when you spook the herd, you've clearly spooked the herd here. I mean, you got over half the United States population on lockdown. You have spooked the herd. When you spook the herd, it tends not to run back in the same direction right out of the gates. I mean, it just does not do that. So be careful. I've talked to I've gone on some webinars or podcasts with a lot of my friends and people through the rural farming communities. I mean, a lot of them are in somewhat denial on this thing. It's similar to what I was listening to when I had seen it in China and talked to people in China. And then my daughter was in Italy in the middle of it. And I listened to her mouth tell me, I'm getting calls from the United States and powerful people saying, hey, Kev, giving you a heads up, try to get your daughter out of there. I can get a plane over to her and you can fly her out of there. This is 2 weeks now. 2 weeks, 3 weeks before anything even hits hardly the press. I call Kennedy and say, hey, babe, you're an adult. She's 22 years old. I said, you got a decision to make. I said, windows open and windows closed. Here's the dilemma. You're probably going to get locked down. She'd been in Barcelona, Spain. She'd been in Budapest. She'd been all over here. I said, you're probably going to get locked down. And the government is, going to make a move at some point, 2 to 3 weeks. When that happens, it could be too late. They'll start canceling flights out of there. There'll be a mad rush. And I don't know if you get quarantined down in New York or where you get quarantined down. Her decision was that she's a block from the Vatican. She's just an awesome place, time of her life. She says, Dad, I guess if I got to get quarantined down, I'll get quarantined down here in Italy by the Vatican, and we'll see how it is. She said nothing was going on. I mean, they were going out partying every night. She was traveling around Italy freely. There was nothing. And I was telling her, I said, Kennedy, I'm getting serious news and insight that this is starting to become a bigger issue. And you need to you need to use your brain here a little bit and think about this. And, we finally got through to her after the U.S. Embassy sent her a personal note that said, hey, here's the deal. You need to get on a plane, get the hell out of here. We're going to pull your visa. And that's it. I mean, you've heard your dad's told you things. We've told you things. You need to get, and she listened. Now, when she got back to New York, she took a direct flight back to New York from Italy. It was 3 weeks ago. There was no one there. I told her, hey, expect that you're going to be taken into a different terminal. You're going to be quarantined off probably up in New York, and there's going to be some issues. You know, we might not see you for a few weeks. I don't know how it's going to play out. She gets off the plane, calls us, there's nobody there. Her and the whole plane really go to the, get their luggage and dispense and go to their own flight. So, you know, like I said, I think the infection's well seeded now here in some of our smaller communities. Where Michelle and I live here, just outside of Kansas City, small towns. There's 3 in one town and there's 3 cases in another town not far away. And I'm telling you, it's well seeded across the U.S. You just had all these kids travel to Florida to go to spring break and to all these other places. You had all the colleges who played out spring break and then shut the kids down on the campuses. They're going to all come back to their rural towns and communities and homes. And you're going to get the virus fairly well seeded. Now, from there, that's where things are going to start to get dicey. I mean, we don't figure peak infection hits New York for what, 2 more weeks probably? You probably don't get peak death in New York for at least a couple more weeks, 2-3 weeks. I heard Cuomo on today. They have 40,000 ICU cases, but they only have 3,000 ICU beds right now in New York City. 3,000 ICU beds equipped with ventilators. And they have 40,000 right now that need it. So, you know, I don't think by any means have we seen the worst of what's going to play out in the media and the worst of how Americans are going to feel. I knew this week the Fed would come out and the government would come out, Washington, and provide monetary and fiscal stimulus. Those 2 things excited the bulls and gave the bulls something to chew on. Now I'm asking you, I don't care what happens until the virus, there's either a cure or this virus gets behind us. The U.S. consumer don't take his hand off the brake. In 2 weeks from now or a week from now, you have to continue to keep the bulls fed. I learned this a long time ago. Bulls have to eat all the time. All right. Bears can go into hibernation for months. Bears don't have to have near as much food in the market. Bulls have to eat damn near every other day. So you got to have bullish headlines coming out that are as good as the bullish headlines that have just come out to keep this thing moving higher. And maybe I'm nuts and maybe I'm dead wrong and maybe people continue to just pump money into it. But I'm telling you, I think the goal here is to come out unscathed. I mean, I've told Jordan, I've told the kids, listen, when the dust settles and the smoke clears, if I can have just as much money when this started and when it ends, I'm going to be a happy camper because there's going to be a shitload of opportunities. There's going to be opportunities everywhere. When Jordan first got out of school, 6 months out, hey, Dad, I want to open a restaurant and a bar. Well, Michelle and I have had several restaurant and bars, and geez Louise, I mean, those are experiences. And I just said, son, listen, I'd been in on several meetings, several board meetings with big funds, and we felt the restaurant and bar space was massively overbuilt. We said, listen, most of the people that own these restaurant and bars have not ever experienced one recession, not even one dip, because since 2009, this economy has done nothing but move higher. I mean, we broke 08, 09 and crushed everyone, and then we started to come out of it. So most of the people that own the restaurants and the bars, they've never experienced a recession. They just keep moving out, expanding, open more restaurants, open more bars. And I told Jordan, I said, the first recession we get, you can walk around down here in any of these bigger cities and you pick one and we'll buy it because you'll be able to buy it for pennies on the dollar. I promise you. Well, shit, this isn't a recession. I mean, this thing is completely shut people down. So sure, the government's going to come out and bail some people out and they're going to throw some money at this thing, massive amounts of money. But I question it. I question how you're going to bring a lot of these smaller fragmented mom and pops back online. Yes, you are going to save and keep, the McDonald's, the Chipotle's, the Starbucks who employ thousands and thousands and thousands of people. But a guy that owns one restaurant or 2 restaurants and he's closed down for 30, 60 days, I don't know. I think you're going to be able to pick up some really big bargains. And like I said, I don't think there's going to be any shortage of opportunity. So several of my best friends and some of the biggest traders I know, we're all just saying, hey, look, there's buildings that you want to race into that are on fire and look for bargains, but this is not one of them. I just think you do not want to try and be a hero here. And I'm telling you, I would be hesitant, like I said, to race in. We think this thing chops. It probably sucks a lot of people back into the upside. Hell, I don't know. This thing could go higher for 3 or 4 more days and just get everybody fired up and racing in. And then I suspect we chop around and we start what I call a rolling bear market, which is lower highs and lower lows. I'm not saying it's going to happen immediately or all at once. It'll just be a lower highs and lower lows as you start to see some of the earnings come out and you start to see some of the real burn that took place as far as money and cash. And so you get, you sit there and you just have to ask yourself, how low can this go? Let's talk oil for a second. Hell, when oil broke below $30, I was on the phone all day with hedge fund guys saying, hey, we're going to dip a toe in here and start buying some oil. We can't stay below 30. Well, hell, now we can't stay below 20. And I was on calls all week at the beginning of the week. Hey, there's an outside chance here this thing could go to sub $10. I mean, we might be trading single digits in crude. You had analysts coming out saying we'd be negative crude. There was a period of time I remember back in up in the Balkans where there was a couple of operations that paid crude was negative. They were paying like 50 cents a barrel. They were paying 50 cents a barrel to haul it off. No, I don't know if that happens again. I'm not saying crude goes to negative, but I'm saying you could get it in single digits pretty damn quick. Just think about it. All your frackers, most all of your producers here in the U.S. have hedges in place, and they're going to keep pumping because the hedges are in place for a few more months, and they're profitable on their hedges. So as those hedges come off, now that's a different story. But you basically shut demand immediately off. I mean, demand's just boom across the world, not just in the U.S. We're talking India shut down. I mean, they're across the world. We've shut down demand. So as you start to play that forward, they're going to keep pumping. The Saudis have said they're going to pump more, and Russia has said they're pumping more. Now, Russia obviously wants to drive the U.S. fracker out of business completely. It would behoove them to do that. Saudis probably see an opportunity to flush people out as well. So they're going to keep the pedal to the metal, and they're going to pump like crazy. Now, we've heard the Saudis have already tied up a majority of the ocean freight on the crude side. So, you don't have, I should say storage, ocean storage. So you're running out of a place to store crude oil. There's been some countries that have stepped up and said they're going to take it and just put it in their strategic reserves. Hell, we're almost full down at Cushing's. I don't know where we're going to stack it up at. So like I said, you've shut demand off. So now all of a sudden we got this glut of oil. There's talk, and you guys have seen, we've got gasoline prices at the pump under $2, and there's heavy talk that we could be under $1 in gasoline prices. I've heard some guys locked in propane, hell, for under 50 cents, and guys are talking about locking in next year's fuel at a great price as well. But I don't know. I think in the next 30 days, they could drive, next 60 days, they may drive this gasoline price or diesel price just dramatically low. And that's something to keep your eye on. If these input costs get stupid cheap, we could see that play out. Now, what's that doing to corn? Hell, it's keeping a lid on corn because you're going to run, there's no question. And I've been on the phone with several of our CEOs on the ethanol side. There's no question you're going to shut some plants that are not going to come back online. They are going to be done and done. The weaker plants are going to go out of business. Your stronger plants are going to get stronger is what we suspect. Now, how much total corn demand does that curb? That's anyone's guess. I've heard as much as, 500 million bushels could be cut off of demand. Now, I'm not one of those people. I think you're more like 200, 250 million bushels of corn demand is going to be cut because of what we're going to lose on the ethanol side. It could be more severe. You saw Poet come out yesterday, the biggest player basically. Poet come out and made some big announcements on their end on how they're tapering back. We have heard of a few plants not taking delivery on corn. So if you had contracts, you had it booked, they're saying, don't bring it because we're going to pay eventually, they're saying, and we want it delivered eventually, but not right now. I don't know how the hell you take that contract to the bank. There's a chance, if they go out of business, you're not going to get that contract or that price. So remember back, I don't know when it was, 08, 09, maybe 08, 09, when wheat ran up to like $8, $10, $12, some folks booked wheat up at that price range. By the time they went to deliver it, all those people were out of biz, and wheat prices were back down to $5, and nobody got anything, even though you had a contract in place. So, I don't know how it plays out. It is definitely scary times, especially on the crude sector, because a lot of that's tied, and that contagion is tied to some of the banks. Now, some of those banks, like I said, happen to be in the ag space as well, or heavily invested in the ag space, and that could touch us a little more negatively if they have to tighten up the reins a little bit and pull back some of the lines of credit or some of those things because they have too much exposure on the crude side. So, those are things you have to think about. Now, I took a bullish position in soybeans about a week and a half ago, just because I was on a call with a hedge fund guy again, and he was worried about Brazil and their equity positions, and they were going to start taking some short positions on the equity side because they were seeing a lot of protests throughout Brazil, and they said, hey man, Brazil's got all these thousands of people on the street protesting in different places. What if this corona thing gets in, and hits them? Well, all of a sudden, it wasn't that next day, we're on the phone, we get a call that they had a case in Brazil. Guy about 55, 56 years old. So it's domesticated. It's in the country now. And how the hell is Brazil going to control it? Well, they got this many people out in the street, need any protest. So we were like, if this thing breaks loose in Brazil and it shuts down some of these ports, more than shut down the ports, maybe it's not going to shut down the ports, but it's going to shut down the trucking. And they're so dependent on trucking, just from out of the field to the facility, from the facility to the processor, from the process to the export. There's a lot of trucking that takes place. And what we saw happen in China outside of Wuhan and Habib early on is they were having trouble at the ports and in the trucking. Brazil, there were 37, 38 Panamaxes at one time supposedly circling off the ports because China couldn't get anyone to show up to work. At some point, risk to reward becomes a pretty pressing issue. You might not go work at Casey's or Quick Trip, Casey's say for $8, $10 an hour. If you got to be taking money all day long and being face to face with people coughing and hacking on you with something that might kill you, so you start to think, am I going to go drive this truck across the country here, when there's nowhere open to get gas and there's nowhere open for me to go to the bathroom and I'm putting my family at risk? You start to think twice. So we believe that there's going to be some logistical issues and constraints in Argentina. There's going to be some issues and constraints in Brazil and South America. We think there's going to be some issues in parts of Europe on the delivery of wheat. We think there's going to be some issues in the Black Sea region in parts of Russia and into Ukraine, possibly with the delivery of wheat. We think some of these countries are going to want to make absolutely certain they have food. So we think they're going to come for supply of wheat. There's no replacement. Why I got long soybeans rather than corn or wheat is we just believe there's going to be a high demand for meal. Over half the world's meal comes out of Argentina. I'm not saying Argentina is going to shut down and stop, but they're having a tough time sourcing. If you're a farmer, you want to drive the truck in to deliver the beans at the crushing facility. Paraguay shut down the border. They're not trucking any beans over into Argentina, so that becomes an issue. There's just a lot of what ifs. And like I said, look what's happening here. This is an extremely difficult play for us to run. I got to believe those countries fumble the ball 50 times trying to run the play. I mean, I think they're going to have trouble running that play and quarantining it off, getting it stopped if they have to get it stopped, and just how that logistically works itself out. That's why I made the comment the other day. I said, this may be a real blessing in disguise for American agriculture. This may be when the world's buyers turn back to the United States as a place to source agriculture. I'm just hoping that we are able to figure it out first, get the disease stopped first, and get things moving in the right direction. And I hope that is how it plays out. And I think that is going to be how it plays out. Now, I don't know how long the world looks to come back to the U.S. and pay higher prices. I'm hoping maybe we've seen a peak in the U.S. dollar. Maybe the dollar starts to come down in valuation. That would be a tailwind for commodities. I think there are several things that could play out. that could give us some opportunities for higher prices. So as far as corn's concerned, I'm not pricing any right here. In fact, we legged out of some hedges on the way down. I think you start dropping into that 320 to 330 range. I'm going to leg out of a few more. There are some bears out there talking they could pressure us possibly to 280, 290 if they really want to lean on crude and that spills over into the corn market as ethanol kind of has a meltdown. Like I said, I'm legging out if we get down into those areas. I think there's brighter roads ahead. I don't think we're going to plant as many corn acres as the USDA is tossing out right now. I think there could be some weather concerns. There's obviously some labor concerns that we could talk about. I don't see any reason that to be overly bearish this market down here at these price levels. You know, beans, they may pressure beans back into that 820, 830 area. I'd probably be buying a little bit more, dipping a little toe in. They could pressure a bit more. I did lift a touch of wheat today. I've been long wheat for a while, spring wheat and soft red winter wheat. Lifted just a touch to bank some profits, price a little bit. But like I said, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic about the ag sector. We bought some stock, you know, down on the break. You know, Corteva to CF. I bought some fertilizer stock, Nutrient, Deere on the big break. Now they popped 10, 15%. We took some profits off. I like, if I get stuck with those, I like getting stuck with them. Let me just say it that way. If we get stuck and we roll on through and continue a bear market, if I can stay with them at that valuation, I don't feel like I'm in a real bad position with those. So as far as Costco, Walmart is, to roll into a bear market, we liquidated our Uber shares. We had a big position in Uber. We liquidated probably maybe a bit early. Obviously, we popped it back up today. I just wonder if we do go into a rolling bear market, say a 2-year span, will Tesla and Waymo and Google and some of these other players, Apple, will we be further along on this driverless car thing? And you won't have a need possibly for as many Uber drivers. You may have a lot more driverless cars out there. So all I'm saying is play it out in your head. Where will we be in 2 years and what stocks are relevant and what stocks won't be relevant? Like I said, Michelle, that's in the movie theaters. AMC stock dropped down to $2 or $3. I don't care. I don't think they'll be here in 3 or 5 years. I think you get through this. We heard a lot of the movies that are already canned. They're going to go roll them out direct to our computers for $9.99, $9.99. You know, a lot of the movie companies that make movies, you know, movies in the past, just like drive-in movie theaters had lost a ton of traction there at one point. You know, I got to start thinking, you know, who will be relevant, who won't be relevant as we move forward. So those are really the main ingredients that I have. Like I said, I don't think this thing's behind us anywhere close as of yet. You know, they keep saying it's over in China and then it's over in Italy. Well, hell, then it comes back and here we are again. And, you know, the biggest fear that was early on was that this gets behind us towards the end of May, you know, mid to the end of May. Maybe it pushes out a little further than that, but then hopefully we have more tools in our toolbox to fight this thing for the second wave. You know, everyone wants to bring up and take note that the Spanish flu in the 1918, 1919, it wasn't the first wave, it was the second wave that did all the devastation. So that's why I said, I think it could be a little bit of a rolling bear market in stocks. I think that may prove to be beneficial though to US ag if it plays out the way I'm thinking it's going to play out. And we're kind of just repositioning our turrets, taking that stance. We got to hope our rural communities stay safe and we don't see any hot spots pop up. They're going to have a tough time just because of the lack of hospitalization and lack of facilities in those areas. So, I mean, I think the main thing is just stay safe and try and keep the family safe and be prudent on the risk that you're taking. You know, I don't think you can take vacations and get amongst a wide swath of people at this point or at this juncture, just because the risks are too high. And here's where we're at. So, I mean, my whole life, I've done nothing but assess risk, whether it was at the exchange or in trading or our own investments. And you know, the crazy part of this whole thing is that you make this bet hey, I think this thing is all bullshit and it's all blown out of proportion because of the media and the press. And I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Okay, let's say you're right. So what? Nothing changed. Your just life's the same. It's just you're the same as it was. Now let's say you're wrong. Well, you're not wrong. You're horribly wrong. You're wrong. You're out of the game wrong. So the risk to reward on taking that stance is just foolish. You can have the opinion all you want, but to make that move with your business or with your family or your loved ones, one of the dumbest risk assessment moves I've ever seen in my life. So, I mean, I'd sit and debate anyone all day long. And that's why I said opinions are one thing. I've had millions of opinions, but that's not what I do when my family's at risk or my family's financial future and their businesses are at risk. Then I take a more constructive, risk appropriate type of move. And that's what I said. I think, you really have to play that one out in your head. And listen, guys, it becomes a psychological game. Who's going to win this thing? The people that can be the most patient or who's going to win this. The easiest thing to do right now is race in and buy the dip. Well, how often in your life did you make your shitloads of money on something that was super easy? I rarely do. Most of the time, it's a psychological mind bender that it puts me through, and then I know. So I'm just letting everyone know. I mean, that's the easiest thing to do. The hardest thing to do right now, when we have nothing but time, is to sit on your hands and do nothing. And so think about it. The smartest guys I know right now are doing nothing. And I learned that a long time ago in trading. The decision to do nothing is a decision. You can either be bullish, you can be bearish, or you can make the decision to do nothing. And I'm letting you know, these are waters and these are times you can shoot your foot off here, just doing something silly. You're getting bored. I mean, my wife says all the time, you're just doing that because you're bored. And she's probably right. A lot of times I think I do a lot of stuff because I'm just bored. So I think you got to be patient here. And it's going to be really hard because we have all this time. And the other thing is this, we're going to be sitting here and we're going to be thinking, tick tock, sitting in my house, cooped up, this sucks, sitting out on our farm. And we're going to be like, nothing's happening. This is dumb. We're all sitting here, nothing's happening. Well, wasn't that what we want to happen? Isn't that really what we want to happen? Is nothing happen? So think about it. Just be patient. Hope the hell nothing happens. Hope this is all for naught. Let's just, get through it. Like I said, if you can get through and get across this river to the other side, there is going to be so much opportunity, I think, for ag and in other areas. I mean, Michelle and I, like I said, people that I'm going to buy some property in some really badass locations across the U.S. I promise on this break, because we know a ton of people and a ton of investors who were loaded up in properties that were doing and paying for them through Airbnb. Well, everybody, all of our properties and all of our buildings and all of our real estate, we didn't get very overextended at all. I mean, most of mine are paid, and I can weather the storm. They're all the Airbnbs canceled for the next 2-3 months out. All of them have canceled, except maybe like one or two dumb people or something, and they'll probably cancel as they get closer. But they're all canceled. So I'm telling you, those people that have big mortgages on those high-end vacation homes or things like that, there's going to be a fire sale. I promise there's going to be a fire sale. So be patient. Like I said, it's going to take a little time. Just try not to get yourself beat up as we get over to that part. That's our thinking. And we're just trying to preserve wealth right now and preserve capital and keep dry powder. So like I said, we're not trying to get aggressive on opportunities, trying to create and make wealth. This is a time when you want to preserve, build a moat, hunker down. It's going to be fine. We're going to get through this, and then there's going to be the opportunities. Let the other dummies race in there. In my opinion, that's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think until you see something about a cure or we get past the peak dying, until then, I think it's going to be tough for the market to sustain bullish momentum. Let's put it that way.
So,
Barrett, that's all I got. Yeah.
Well, a couple questions here real quick from the audience. Do you see a significant drop or gain in organic grain demand in the next 12 months?
I that's a tough question. What they like to say is this: when you get in times of an economic downturn or recession, I always tell everyone that everyone always asks me, what's the definition of a recession or versus depression? I always say, when your neighbor loses his job, that's a recession. When you lose your job, that's a depression. So I'm not trying to be funny or facetious, but they always say too, when you start to see that downturn, the hedge fund guys and the fund traders will start to lean on cattle and the higher protein type items. So your higher valued items like your organic, you would maybe see the funds lean on those and hedge it or cross hedge it, being long, like say number 2 yellow corn, meal, wheat, more of a staple type item. So do I think organic will gain traction as we come out of it? Yes. Do I think knee-jerk reaction, it could get pressured a little bit up front, I believe. Now, we were just doing a study on this. We think that the governments and the powers that be, when they put money back to work and they fund a lot of the things they're going to fund, not just here in the US, but globally, we think they're going to put a lot of that work back towards clean energy and climate change. And I was writing about that today. I think it's going to create more hurdles and hiccups for us on the farming side, because they're going to see the satellite imagery over Wuhan and China and what it did to reduce carbon. And they're going to see what's happened in Italy and how it's cleared up the canals and all this jazz. And when they come back and bail some people out, they might let some of those people die. And, or some of those businesses die. And they're going to back more clean energy, more healthy things that they believe, or people believe, or consumers believe are going to be more healthy for them. So I think longer term, Barrett, that person's probably right in thinking the consumer is going to have a more healthy attitude and a more health conscious attitude towards climate change, clean energy, organic, the things that we've seen as bigger hurdles in our space. I think they even become bigger hurdles, probably.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about traders and people who own stock and portfolio. What does this all mean for the farmer, whether or not they own stock? I mean, what can the farmer do to deal with all of this uncertainty?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and what we've seen as a hiccup, like for my old man, and when I used to work with grandpa on the farm or everything, times like this, he just, he didn't really want to talk to anybody, communicate with anybody. Nobody know his business or anything else. But I think this is time you're going to have to talk a lot. You're going to have to communicate a lot with your family and your workers, and you're going to have to make sure there's a game plan in place. Hell, I mean, people don't even know how the hell they're getting this thing, and they're getting it. What's the contingency plan at your farm? If that were to happen, what are you going to do? And then, you got to talk and communicate with the people you're delivering to. You don't know what they're tied to, like delivering at the ethanol plant or delivering at a place that's over levered on something you might not even know about. You're gonna have to talk to your bank. I think you better be open and talk to them, see what they're wanting or how they're playing things out. And just really, I think, and what we've learned even from the military and everyone else, when things escalate and unknowns become greater, communication has to become more. And our human nature is to communicate less because we're worried and stressed, and we just don't want to talk about it, put our head in the sand, so to speak. But we got to take the opposite approach, and I know that's going to be difficult for a lot of folks. But I think that's one of the main things is really increase your communication, and then start to look like you did, Barrett, with the fire. I mean, all hell might be breaking loose, but there could be some huge opportunities ahead, and how we pivot is going to be imperative, and how we think about things, and where you take some of that dry powder and put it to work.
Yeah. My grandfather used to always say, overcoming your greatest challenges is where you get your greatest successes. So should be plenty of opportunities.
Sure.
One of the guys talking about challenges, saying with all the ethanol coming off, all ethanol plants, shutting down, reducing production, what's going to be the market, where are these markets going to go for grains in the long term if ethanol no longer is the demand that it once was?
Well, that's kind of what a lot of people have always said. They're like, hey, we got to quit spending so much money and time trying to, keep ethanol. Obviously, ethanol is one of the greatest windfalls we've ever had. And I hope it will continue to be. And I think it will continue to be, because I think we're going to be fine as we get this, some of the weaker plants closed and out, some of the stronger plants in. I think there's going to be some big opportunities on the export side, and I think it's going to it's going to get its legs back underneath, and we're going to be fine. But it'd be awesome if we could find something new that's like ethanol that we could do with corn or with beans or wheat to that extent. I mean, just finding alternatives for crops is where we would really love to see, some more R&D placed and some more money. And hopefully we can find that in the coming months, years. And I think there's some companies out there working on those things. And like I said, we don't know at this point. We couldn't have envisioned ethanol, 30 years ago being what it is today. And just as we sit here today, there'll probably be some things that we learn or are able to grow on our farms that become industrialized and really produce some good profits. So that's what we're hoping for.
So
we see value in it that way. Yeah.
We have a guy that asked, do you see guys switching from corn to beans? Do you see that as a trend?
We've heard that in the last few days. Now, we had heard some guys down south maybe sending back some cottonseed and taking on a little more corn. We've definitely in the last few days, last week, we've heard some guys maybe switching over and wanting to switch some corn acres to beans. Simply, I think the beans are going to be easier for guys, especially if you get into a labor issue or a problem and you can't get guys that are going to show up to work and can't come over on visas, and you got a little less tied up in it, and it may be able just easier to handle transport harbors and all the way down the line. So we have seen that, and to keep people on that tune, in China, a lot of their producers are having trouble getting fertilizer up into key areas, so they've cutting back on their corn and bean acres. The government's coming out right now trying to subsidize the hell out of and incentivize planting more corn and bean acres, but a lot of guys have kind of had to switch some of those acres to some different crops because they just couldn't get their hands on the fertilizer. So, logistics start to become a concern at some point. We hope that isn't the case in the U.S. In some of these other countries, I think that will be the case. So it could be interesting how it plays out here in the next, like I said, 3-6 months.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
So, Dave, we've got a few people that brought us some questions about soil health and using Holganix to help improve soil health and yield. Can you talk just very briefly about how guys are using Holganix and other microbials to build soil health and yield? And specifically, we have questions around do you use it foliarly or do you use it as a soil application, and is it compatible with other products when they're planting?
Okay, well, I think let me just start real quick on soil health. So putting organic matter on top of the ground contributes about 1/3 to building soil. So for example, cover crops, manures and such, most soil, or its organic matter, its structure, its functionality is built through roots. And, depending on the crop, there can be a lot of biomass under the ground that we don't even see. So that's why we keep showing pictures of roots. And one of the things that really gets roots going are the microbes, because they feed each other. The plant feeds the microbes feed the plant. And part of the benefit of that is a lot more root mass. So again, that's why we want the product early in the planting cycle. Really, at planting is the best time to apply it. We like it in the furrow if you can. You can mix it with anything you want except fungicide, because the product, of course, has a lot of fungi in it, and we don't want those to get killed off by tank mixing. If you don't go in furrow and mix with a starter, you absolutely can go foliar. And really, if you think about Barrett's story, where he had all these spray trucks going out around the Chesapeake Bay, every application there was foliar. So the foliar applications work. We just want it as close to planting or emergence as practical. What I never want is someone to make a separate pass just to put our product down, because that's costs you more money, creates more compaction, wear and tear on your equipment. So put us in with a pre-emergent herbicide, a post-emergent herbicide, it'll work just fine. But by the time you're going to do any kind of top dressing or side dressing, that's too late. We want it when it's really close to planting.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
You want to say something, Dave?
No. Was that it, or is there another part to the question?
Yeah. So, how close to planting does it need to be? That this person's just elaborating on that.
Okay, so I would say if you can go, with the planter with the pre-emergent, if you don't do a liquid pass and you do a burn down, as long as, so let me take a step back. We have over 800 microbes in our mix: bacteria, fungi, protozoa. Most of them are degraders. So if you don't have a growing plant where they can help colonize on the root zone, they need something to eat. So if you've got a cover crop you're burning down, or a lot of debris because you're no-till or strip tilling, that's all great because that's food for the microbes to then break down for the crop you're about to plant. If you have bare dirt, then wait till after emergence if you can't go in furrow, and apply with a post-emergence spray. But do it, early. If the crop's a foot tall or more, corn or soy, we've missed the window of really rapid early root development, which helps so much in getting the crop established, getting nutrients and water, and resistance to different stresses.
And just so everybody knows, I know we've gone a little bit long here. We will have a digital raffle if anybody's interested in getting 500 acres worth of Holganix microbial product for free. We're going to give that away to one of the attendees. To do so, you'll need to go to the webinar link, and you'll have an opportunity to listen to our webinar about Holganix and soil health. And you can just listen to it in the truck or the tractor, or you can watch it on your computer. And then it'll give you a form to fill out and enter to win 250 gallons free. We're going to give that away to somebody, and that's worth about, north of $4,500, enough to do 500 acres of row crop. So we will have a free drawing for that. And it'll be a really good, 25-minute webinar on soil health and using microbes to build soil health. And we also have a survey that we're going to send out. And so, Katie, how they get the webinar? They're just we're going to send this link out to everybody on the webinar.
Yeah, so everybody can go to www.holganix.com/win to enter. We'll also send it out in our follow-up email tomorrow, along with the recording and any resources mentioned during the webinar. And then in regards to the actual survey, that pops up when people are leaving. Okay. So we're just asking that people take the survey regarding the quality of the webinar, so we get feedback for future webinars.
And so please take a look at that webinar if the one to enter the free drawing if you want to learn more about Holganix. We do have one more question about Holganix, Dave, just to kind of field, and then we're going to finish up with one final question to Kevin. And so, Dave, we have two questions in here about Holganix and shelf life and keeping microbials healthy and active. Do you want to help explain how
Sure.
that?
Yeah, so unlike a lot of microbial products, and I also tend to chime in on my background. I spent 30 years or so with Monsanto. I'm a scientist by training, did a lot of stuff. I was probably a bigger skeptic and cynic of soil biology than Barrett you were back when you had the warehouse fire. But meeting you and meeting the customers, so I'm talking Jack Nicklaus's home course in Columbus, Ohio, Muirfield Village, the guy that runs the Dallas Cowboys facility, Pittsburgh Pirates, on, and all the things that they said they saw with this product. I had to then educate myself on soil biology and soil health. So it's the diversity that matters. And that's why we stress that we have over 800 species. And I just read another science paper today about when that diversity is narrowed, how nutrients don't cycle, how there's more phosphorus runoff, how nitrogen is not cycled back to the plant, et cetera, et cetera. So this gets to the stability. Because our mix is so complex, the only way to stabilize it, and they're alive, these are not dormant, you don't have to activate them, is through refrigeration. So we keep it cold. Our producer dealers also keep it cold, and we give them refrigeration. However, the end user doesn't have to worry about it. It's not ice cream. If you buy a tote of our product or get the free one, you've got a good 3 weeks to use it. And then once you put it into your spray tank, it's just basically not going to go bad because there's plenty of oxygen. So the product is fresh, the microbes are alive, but fortunately they're pretty durable. And over the last couple of years, and we've done probably, I don't know, 150, 170,000 acres of corn and soy combined. We haven't had anything go bad. So it works pretty well. It's pretty easy to use.
And just so everybody understands, the half a gallon per acre cost is about $9.25 an acre. We typically see yield improvements that give people a 2 to 10 times return on investment. The first application plus allows them to continue to build soil health. The more they use it, the better it gets. So just and we purposely did not make this a Holganix commercial, although we certainly did talk about Holganix. We wanted to kind of give you a big overview of the markets and access Kevin. So I do want to finish up with one question for Kevin. Kevin, what do you see? You talked about alternative crops. We talked about the grain. Where's the grain market's going to go? Do you have any outlook on hemp and where you see hemp going over the next year, 5 years? Trends? Anything that you're seeing there? Did we lose Kevin?
Kevin, you are on mute.
Always on mute.
You muted yourself, Kevin, I think. So while we're waiting for Kevin to come back online, I want to just thank everybody for attending the webinar and for just coming on board and being part of the Holganix community. If there's anything we can do to be helpful, we certainly would love to get on some of your properties and some of your farms and show you what we can do with a Holganix microbial product to help improve yield, improve soil health. We do it right at planting with corn, soy, wheat, cotton. If it grows, we can help it grow better. If it grows in soil, we can help it grow better by building soil health and plant health with Holganix microbials. And we're also looking for a couple of more entrepreneurial farmer dealers. Kevin, I think you're unmuted now or no?
Must be having difficulty.
All right. Well, we did hear Kevin had some technical challenges there. Just so you understand, we are seeing an uptick in hemp for sure. I mean, everybody's kind of dabbling in it. It's a little bit like the Wild Wild West. 2 years ago, people were loving that they got into hemp, and last year, I'm not sure everybody loved the fact that they were in hemp. It was hard to find a market and hard to find consistent pricing. Overall, we're seeing the market grow 14% a year, and it's going to continue to grow into the foreseeable future with lots of bumpy roads. So I think it is something to stick a toe in the water on if you're interested in it. I think there is opportunity there, but there's going to be some time for that opportunity to turn into something that's a little bit organized and predictable. So I wouldn't jump in with both feet unless you really know what you're doing. But it is an interesting market, and it is one that does provide a good ROI per acre, provided you can have a consistent market for it. And last year that market was inconsistent. Those that were vertical and could build their own product did really well. Those that had some lines into some good markets were good, but others I know got stuck a little bit. So Kevin, I'll go back to you one more time just to see if your audio is back up. All right. So with that, everybody, I want to thank you all again for attending our webinar here. I hope it was helpful. I hope we were able to provide some background on what to do in this market. Be safe out there. It's definitely an unusual time for everybody, and be staying close to your families, staying close to your farms, and while it's a little tricky to invest in the markets, I would say look at where you can invest, which is into your farm and into your family, and what can you do to make those things better. And that's the things we can control, and that's the things we should control right now. So thank you, everybody. If there's anything we can do for you here at Holganix, you've got our contact information. Katie's going to be sending up some follow-up communications. If there's anything we can do, we're here for you. So thank you very much, and everybody be safe.